This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Hello and welcome to the Liverpool Blood Red podcast. I'm your host today, Connor Dunn, and joining me is Ian Doyle, and I'm going to come to him exactly first because he's currently eating a sandwich.
I am, because I'm hungry.
How are you, Ian?
I am hungry.
Good.
Well, slightly less hungry than I was about 5 minutes ago.
I'll ask you some questions about the football once you finish your mouthful.
Thank you.
I'm also joined by Theo Squires. How are you, Theo?
Good, thanks, Connor. You?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you. And a little night out on Saturday, a little bit of a 2-day hangover, but all is well.
I've managed to avoid a 2-day hangover, but I was in here yesterday. So.
Congratulations. And Matt Addison, how are you?
Very good, thank you, yes.
Good, very pleased. Well, we are here to talk Liverpool and talk a Liverpool game that didn't quite go to plan. Ian Doyle, you were down in Shrewsbury for the FA Cup, fourth round match, where Jurgen Klopp's Reds drew 2-2 with Shrewsbury Town. What did you make of the game?
It was a good FA Cup game. If you love the FA Cup, then you'll love watching that, certainly watching it on telly. Not sure many of the Liverpool fans would have enjoyed watching it so much. Certainly the ones in the away end, there wasn't much noise coming from them. Even when Liverpool were 2-0 ahead, it just seemed as though Liverpool weren't very much at it, which I'm sure we'll touch on it. There's quite a few reasons for that. Obviously, Jurgen Klopp made 11 changes. And for the youngsters, it's one thing playing at Anfield in front of 50,000 people, giving their backing against Everton. It's quite another thing, the intimate surrounds of somewhere like the Montgomery Waters Meadow, which is a great name for a stadium, with about 7,500 Shrewsbury fans just, baying for their team. Bit of a bobbly pitch. I mean, it wasn't a terrible pitch, but it wasn't perfect. Jurgen Klopp made comment to the fact that Liverpool never really got used to it. But they were let down not by the youngsters, but by the senior players. I mean, you had to look at some of the performances, and the other thing on top of that, which, as I say, we will touch on, I guess, is the fact that 3 of them were coming back from having been out for, I think it was 3 months, 6 weeks, and nearly 2 months, respectively. And if they're all making the first start, you can get away with 1, possibly 2, but to have 3 in a team with so many other youngsters and a couple of fringe players, bit of a recipe for things not going quite so well. But having said all of that, with the talent that Liverpool had out on the pitch, they still should have won. But you got to say fair play to Shrewsbury. It was their big moment. I know when they made the change, the substitution, I mean, the lad who scored the 2 goals and possibly could have scored a winner at the end, when he came on, it was the striker that went off, Lang. I think he was the Everton fan. I think he's the Everton fan.
Yeah, Lang's the Everton fan,
Yeah. Some of the Shrewsbury fans were booing that decision, not to bring on the other lad, but the fact that he went off, because he'd done actually quite well, and I thought he had done quite well, but obviously the manager knows best, and that kind of paid off a little bit for him, somewhat. So, no, overall, wasn't Liverpool's best performance by any stretch of the imagination. You could argue it's not even a Liverpool team as such, certainly not the one that we used to see in the Premier League and Champions League, but still 11 players representing the club. You could argue that the fact that there was a massive pitch invasion at the end, the fact that Liverpool drew, shows you how far they've come. Yeah,
no, I totally get that point. But Theo, this was obviously a much changed Liverpool side, but have you ever really seen a performance like this from a Liverpool team in recent times? Because I even think back to the Carabao Cup game with Aston Villa, and all the youngsters put out a really spirited performance, really strong, played like a Liverpool team. But that yesterday didn't really feel like it, did it?
No, it didn't. But like Doyle said, when you've got those key players that are coming back, they're not really wanting to play at Shrewsbury. And like Fabinho, he's not going to have played someone like that before, is he? So that's always going to come in and weigh in why they can't go and play at their best. You looked at it before. Liverpool have had these sticky cup ties, but they haven't had one for a few years. Like, we remember them getting knocked out to Barnsley. They've needed replays against Luton, stuff like that. And it's just how good they've become under Jurgen Klopp that you think, they'll just beat everyone quite easily. And it's quite funny that the 2 worst performances we've seen from him for a while have come in the space of a week when he's made so many changes. And you say, well, is the squad a little bit tired or anything, making the changes and that? If you talk about the games earlier in the season in the League Cup, they weren't coming back from injuries, those senior players. You had the likes of Adam Lallana, who's desperate to get an opportunity, desperate to get on the pitch. And then, obviously, at Anfield, you're up for it. It's earlier in the season, all that stuff. You don't want to really be playing a team like Shrewsbury like that when you think you're world champions, European champions. You don't want to be playing a League One team when it's going to be nitty-gritty and then have to proper scrap for it when you're not used to it. So it's a change pace for them. At least they get the week off still with the replay from what Jurgen said. It's just going to be interesting to see how they approach it with who is available.
The point is, though, Matt, I mean, Theo's just said there, Adam Lallana, when he's getting in the team, he's really wanted to prove a point. And I know these players are returning from injury, and you've got to think that they are going to want to prove a point as well, particularly for the likes of Matip and Lovren. You know, they are really fighting for their places. Origi, you know, you might think he had an opportunity with perhaps Mane being injured. And, you know, what do you think, you know, they themselves would be thinking of their performances after that as well?
Yeah, I mean, particularly the two centre-backs, I think they'll be massively disappointed with the way it went. I thought for a period in the first half, it looked like obviously Liverpool were going to go on and win the game comfortably, but then one or two individual mistakes that we haven't really seen from Lovren or Matip for quite a long time now, and I think those two particularly will be disappointed with what they produced. Of course, there's the caveat that they were coming back from injury, but realistically, you know, players of that quality and at that level shouldn't be making mistakes like that against, you know, a League One side as they are. So, you know, I think with Fabinho, there's obviously the excuse that he's been out for a long time, and I think that's slightly different if you're a midfielder, but certainly for the defenders, they would have seen how well Joe Gomez has done. Obviously, Van Dijk is irreplaceable in the first 11. So, yeah, I think one of them at least needed to come in and make a real positive impression, and in the end, they just seem to do quite the opposite.
We always seem to get it with the centre-backs when they come back from injury. They're always really rusty when they get thrown back in. Like Joe Gomez, when he wasn't in the team at the start of the season, he was putting in performances at right-back, wasn't looking good. Dejan Lovren's had his criticism in the past. Joel Matip's had his criticism in the past. And then they get that run of games, they're alongside Virgil van Dijk, and they look so good. You think, oh, that's what they need. Is it the Van Dijk effect, or is it just defenders need that run of games? And it wasn't as though it's your senior players littered all over the pitch. It's the spine of the team. It's like your two centre-backs and your holding midfielder. That's what pieces it all together. And if they're not going to be at the races, it's understandable why the rest of the team will fall apart around it.
I wouldn't criticise the centre-backs too much, says the man who gave them both 5 out of 10. But, you know, giving them 5 out of 10, that's on the basis of how they perform, which was way below their standard. That's fair enough. He says justifying those 5 out of 10 ratings. But they are both coming back from injury. I mean, Matip has played one game since, I think, is it the start of October?
Yeah.
And even then, he probably shouldn't have played against Manchester United. So for him, and especially he's got that, he's seen Gomez going. So he ended last season as a Champions League winner, started this season as second choice, got his place back straight away when, as Theo said, Gomez didn't start particularly well. But he's now seen Gomez go back to what he was 18 months ago. So it's tough for him. I mean, and the other thing is, in the first half, I thought they did okay. The centre-backs, I thought they were fine. They got caught out once, but I think that was more Fabinho, or whoever it was, losing the ball in the middle. It could have even been Curtis Jones.
Yeah,
can't quite remember, but that wasn't their fault, because that was the only way they were playing in the first half. But the second half, I don't understand why Matip kept playing the ball out from defence. It must have been an order from the coaching staff, from Klopp, to do that, because there was Shrewsbury just went, hang on, we're just going to push it really high here. And they were just pressing the two centre-backs when they were passing the ball about the back. And you could argue that Liverpool had no one to belt it to up front because of all the players who were playing. I thought Origi was the biggest disappointment because, as you said, Mane is injured. We don't know how long he's going to be out for. We still don't know. There's an opportunity there for a starting role, because you think that Origi would be first in line with Minamino having played the last couple of games to get himself up to speed. But Origi he had one of those Origi-ish kind of games, didn't he?
Didn't really come alive until 75 minutes.
Yeah, he'd had that chance in the first half when he was in a central position, and then he had that shot from about 35 yards, which to be fair, the keeper did quite well to save that. And that was from a central position as well. When he was out on the left, I mean, where the press box is at Shrewsbury is obviously quite near to the pitch because it's quite a small ground. In the first half, they were positioned by us, and we could see Origi just getting frustrated with himself. Some of the stuff he was doing, it wasn't quite working. When he loses a little bit of confidence, he loses a little bit of his power for some reason, his physique, and he gets knocked off the ball, and then things don't quite go to plan. But, you know, it was an afternoon for him to do something, and he just didn't. And it's strange in a way, because if you look at the other games that he's played in, against Everton he was good, against Arsenal in the Carabao Cup he was good last season, against Wolves he scored in the FA Cup. So when he's had these opportunities, so again, we shouldn't be massively harsh on him, because he's obviously not started a game for... When was the last time he started a game?
Would have been Everton, 5-2.
It would have been... No, he would have been
the
FA Cup game, wouldn't it? The Everton one. That one, yeah. So he's not started loads of games recently. But, you know, as I say...
He's had Minamino come on ahead of him, hasn't he, in the last league game as well?
Yeah, so there were reasons for these players playing poorly, but that doesn't necessarily excuse why in the second half they all fell apart so much, when in the first half they had the basis of that 1-0 lead, and then it's almost like that second goal for Shrewsbury, the own goal that Shrewsbury scored, which at the time we thought what's happened there? We didn't even think it'd gone in because no one seemed to celebrate. We were like, is that? I think it's a goal. What's happened? What's he done that for? Kind of thing. That's the worst thing that could have happened to Liverpool and the best thing that could have happened to Shrewsbury because Liverpool, Adrian speaking after the game, said, they just kind of relaxed, went, 2-0 Shrewsbury, job done. That's when they started messing about with it at the back. And then once Shrewsbury get a chance, they get 2 chances, they get the penalty, it's like the momentum. And to be honest, Liverpool could easily have lost that and nobody would have complained about it.
I'm going to be careful with how I say this, but I suppose part of it is the FA Cup, how it's seen, the perception, not just here, but overseas as well. Like we're in this times now where it's not as important and it is becoming that secondary competition like the domestic cups are on the continent. Whereas if you've got your homegrown players there, like Adam Lallana, James Milner, whatever, they've grown up, they've seen these cup upsets, they know the lower league teams, you can't take them for granted. They've got all the remotes and the stories there. They're going to be up for it. Whereas if you're playing in Spain where it's a secondary competition, or you've grown up in Spain, Italy, Germany, wherever, you don't quite have that same intimidation about playing these lower league teams. So maybe it is attitude there as well.
I disagree.
You reckon?
Yeah, because Lovren's been in England for how many years?
Yeah, but
6 or
still,
7. Matip's been here for 4 years, sorry. Adrian had a good game. He's been with West Ham. Chirivella played very well against Everton. He's been in England for 4 years, and he played in the FA Cup 4 years ago for Liverpool.
Being in England is very different to growing up when you're a teenager, when you're like 8 watching it.
But then it's a chance for them to play, isn't it, as well? So why would you not put in 100%? I don't think the fact it's the FA Cup had anything to do with it. I just think it's the overall, everything that we just already mentioned about players coming back and youngsters playing.
Matt, did Liverpool have anyone other than themselves to blame?
Not really. I think there was... I mean, I agree with Theo to an extent, but
How dare you?
I think, for those players, no matter where you've grown up or no matter what you think of that competition, they shouldn't really have allowed themselves to fall into that trap. And it was, as Ian said before, it was the more experienced players who sort of did drop off in that second half. I mean, Lovren probably was the prime example for me with the mistake on the goal. It's a surprise that Liverpool, a team with that sort of mentality that they've shown time and time again this season, they normally have been able to get over the line, and for whatever reason, yesterday, it just didn't quite happen. I don't want to use the term magic of the cup, but...
You've just used the term magic of the
it's
cup.
It's too late, yeah. But yeah, something strange went on with Liverpool, and I think, look, they'll probably get the job done in the home game.
Really? That is a massive shout when we come back to that.
We will come back to that later, of course. But I mean, I always thought if Liverpool got a home draw in the FA Cup, I'd back them 100%. Away from home, it changes slightly. But I think, to go back to what I was saying, I mean, it was just a surprise that the mentality just wasn't there for whatever reason, and Jurgen Klopp will hope to put that right sooner rather than later.
Just not in the replay because he's not there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Seemingly.
Importantly, Liverpool weren't beaten.
No, they were not.
And I don't think it was all totally negative, as you've already mentioned there, Ian. I thought Chirivella played very, very well, and I thought, he could probably be one of the ones that held his head higher. Neco Williams, I thought, played pretty well as well. How did you make of the other players that perhaps stood out a little bit more in Liverpool's team?
Nico Williams.
Thank you.
Nico Williams. You said Neco.
Okay.
It's okay. Right. Is it Neco or Nico? Now you've got me questioning myself now.
It's definitely Nico.
Is it definitely Nico? Okay, fine. Sorry.
You're forgiven.
Yes, that's no problem. I thought Chirivella was good first half. It's a great pass for Jones's goal. Yeah. Second half, he wasn't one of the only ones that struggled a little bit. But then that's because Fabinho was meant to be the guy who was holding the midfield together, and as we just explained, he had a little bit of a problem with that. I mean, it was interesting. Curtis Jones was an interesting one for me because he's been playing on the left-hand side of the forward line for the under-23s and in the youth league, and he's been very, very good. But he started out as a central midfielder, and I don't think certainly at the moment he forward, is. Didn't he, I think he was more or less playing almost, not always up there, but it made it life a little bit more difficult. There wasn't quite the same...
That's where his goal came from as well, wasn't it? Making that run from that position.
Same dynamism in terms of defence. So maybe the defence didn't... But then they should still... I know we're saying all of this. They should still beat Shrewsbury no matter what. So it was not down to Curtis Jones. It wasn't down to Chirivella. It wasn't down to Yasser Larouche. I thought had a very, very tough game. Gave away the penalty, obviously. But the thing about him is that...
Which wasn't a penalty. He's outside the box.
He should have been sent off then, shouldn't he? So in that ways, he got away with it. Him personally, if not Liverpool as a team. But he carried on going. There was a bit towards the end of the game where I can't remember what happened. Liverpool had a corner, had a few players up. They broke, and he just absolutely legged it back and won the ball or won a throw in or whatever. Stop Shrewsbury from breaking down that flank. So while he had a tough time, he has the mentality that you need to be able to make it, because he just didn't really let it all affect him. Thought Neco Williams, depending on how we call him. We'll have to ask him next time. Yeah, he was good, but again, there was a couple of times where he got caught under the ball when they were playing the diagonals in the second half. That was right in front of where we were sat. But again, he didn't really let it affect him. You've got to bear in mind, that was Larouche's first senior start ever. That's only Williams' third start, is it? I think it's third.
Arsenal would have been the first one,
yeah.
And then Everton.
Yeah, so that's his third start. So these are players who are learning the trade still. I mean, Harvey Elliott, we haven't mentioned him, thought it was very, very tough for him. He didn't really get a pass, didn't do anything wrong. He just didn't do anything because he was totally not involved in the game, and that's kind of something that he's
more
not.
Than any time I've seen him, he looked 16.
Yeah, and he's going to get that because I think when we had Joe Thomason,
that's because he's 16.
Yeah. when we had Joe Thomason on our podcast on Friday, and he was talking about Shrewsbury's team, and he was saying they're a mixture of players who've come up through some Premier League teams, like
Premier League academies,
for example, that Donald Love who was at Manchester United, who scored the own goal, and seasoned professionals who are desperate to make a big impact in what could be the biggest game. So that's the kind of thing. Everton in the last round wasn't that, was it? It was Everton. It's almost like a completely different kind of game.
Definitely.
It was different, and as we mentioned before, it was a different atmosphere. That was an atmosphere that was everything was geared towards Liverpool youngsters succeeding, and this one everything was geared towards them failing. If you add in the fact that the senior players were underperforming, so in that respect, a couple of them, certainly 3 or 4 of them, actually came out of it quite well for varying degrees, and you couldn't blame any of them for anything really, to be honest.
Before we move on, Theo, to a couple of the big talking points from after that game. We've mentioned it a little bit already, but Minamino and Origi, I felt there was a little bit of an opportunity to already discuss with Mane perhaps being injured, probably maybe not going to play against West Ham. We'll come on to the team selection in a minute, but I thought Minamino probably proved himself a little bit better than Origi, and is maybe in with a shout to start midweek.
Potentially, but the issue with Minamino at the moment is he's settling in, so he seems to be better when he's playing centrally. Like we saw it last season with Fabinho when Klopp didn't want to have him as the holding man on his own because he did struggle and he looked a bit leggy when he was given that opportunity. So they had the 2 and the 4-2-3-1 to get the best out of him until he settled, got used to the Liverpool way of playing. And now he looks great, apart from yesterday. And then we had with Minamino, he looks a bit lost at the moment when he plays out wide, but then at the same time, he can sometimes look a bit lightweight. And when you're new to a league, it would be easier to get bullied off the ball and all that. But he still keeps going. And it's one where, well, if Mane's out, if we're going to assume Mane's out, do you put Firmino on the left so you can have him centrally, or do you just put him out wide and hope he can adjust to it, even though that's not where he's been used so far? Origi, he's just one of those. He always has a game like this every so often where he just forgets how to play football. It's just bizarre. And I think we can forgive him doing that against Shrewsbury as long as he turns up against your Barcelonas, your Champions League finals or whatever. I don't mind him being awful against Shrewsbury as long as he's got those moments in him. And if I was Jurgen Klopp, I'd probably lean towards him over Minamino for West Ham just for the experience in it. Okay. And he's more used to that role. Yeah,
fine. Well, we'll come on to team selection for West Ham in a moment, but Matt, I'll come to you with this first because you seem to be thinking that Liverpool are going to beat everyone no matter who they put out. Klopp said after the game that he and no senior players are going to be involved in the replay. He's going to respect the Premier League's winter break. He's been told at the start of the season that he's not to arrange any games in that time and just have the week off. What did you make of that? Was that right or wrong? It was a big debate afterwards. I know the Action Stanley owner has come out, Andy Holt, and called it embarrassing, disgraceful and everything else you can think of.
To be honest, I think he's absolutely right. I think he's been going on for a long time, probably since he's come into the club and come into English football, about how important it is that we have a winter break in England and how we have so many competitions. You know, we have 2 domestic cup competitions. I don't think any other top league around Europe has that. There's so much fixture congestion. I think something does have to be done so that the players don't have as much strain placed on them. You know, we've seen Sadio Mane get injured. I assume that's, you know, something to do with the amount of games that he's had to play over the last couple of seasons. And I think if Jurgen Klopp didn't make that stand, it would almost be a bit strange, given how much he's gone on and on and on about how much he doesn't like it. The fact that he's got this opportunity now to say, well, no, you said we can't play any games in this period. Now you've changed your mind. I'm doing what you told us to do to begin with. I think some people will disagree with it, and I think some people will.
Some people have disagreed with it.
Many people have said it's been controversial, and that's fair enough. But I think from his perspective, the FA Cup isn't a massive priority. The prize money isn't massive. There's no real prestige around it in comparison to the Champions League and the Premier League. I just think the circumstances are right for Klopp to take a stand here and really make a point to the FA or to the Premier League or to whoever really who will listen to say, look, this is something that's got to change, and I'm going to try and force your hand here.
Do either of you two disagree?
I totally disagree. Yeah.
Do you? Go on.
Yeah. I think he could make a point, which he is doing, but there's ways and means of doing it. I think for him to say, for a start, it says the players break, not the managers break, so he should be able to go off and do the game no matter what. So I'm not sure what's going on there. I think
He's booked a holiday, hasn't he? Not able to cancel it.
I think he could probably afford to cancel it somehow. You know what I mean? I think he's obviously big on players' welfare. Not just he made a point of saying after the game, it's not just the mental welfare, the physical welfare even. It's the mental one as well, which we've since subsequently seen the letter or extracts of the letter that was sent last March to Liverpool, I'm presuming all the Premier League clubs, where it says this is a week where it's a break for the players, for their mental well-being and the physical well-being, and we don't want you to organise any competitive or non-competitive games, because there was that fear that some clubs could go off to Dubai and play a friendly against whoever, Barcelona or somebody like that. So they stopped that, and that's the Premier League have said that. It's important to remember the timeline on this, because that was last March. The fixture list came out in June, so they knew what the dates were for the FA Cup and the FA Cup replays. But what they didn't know then is when the actual Premier League break was going to be, because that only got decided in late December.
So do you think Liverpool this season, do you think they've just totally exposed a lack of cohesion between the FA and the Premier League?
I think it's a tough one, really, because don't forget there's the League Cup thing that happened, the Qatar, and that is a one-off, and I don't know how they could have got a way around. There was a way around that. They just refused to take it, and I think Liverpool partly just went, you know what, we'll just play the kids in this particular game, which I think people, while some people didn't like it, understood it. This is different because the players are all available and they're all there, and there's no other game, and Liverpool don't play a game like for another 10 days after it, or when we presume that the replay is going to take place because we don't know yet. So I think Klopp, as I say, he's trying to make a point. I understand the point. I agree with the point, but there's a ways and means to doing it. And I think doing it like this probably is the most dramatic way. I mean, and the other thing is the players. The players have been told, from what Bramard led to believe, that you're on holiday, all the senior players. So presumably from that, none of them will be able to play in terms of Klopp's not going to be there, so they can't play kind of thing, because Neil Critch, the under-23s boss, is at the moment going to take charge of this. So if you're Shaqiri, if you're Keita, if you're Lallana, if you're Lovren or Matip, possibly Milner, Origi, you could even say Minamino, and you've not been playing that much. And there's this game where it's at Anfield, it's a competitive match, it's a cup game, you could get through to the last 16. I think you'd probably want to play. You're not going to be tired. You won't be.
Footballers love their holidays. They love the days off.
Yeah, but you're telling me that Shaqiri needs a rest. He'd be absolutely desperate to play in that game.
I completely agree that these players will be desperate, but I think the broader picture is that he's trying to make a general point. And
True,
I think that's far more important than
I think this will develop. I don't think this is the end.
No,
of
I absolutely
what this is
100%.
happening.
That's why I've written a story today saying it's the FA's next move. There is a possibility, if they were absolutely keen on getting this game played at a different time, they could play it, and I think it's the end of February, but they'd have to move the West Ham game forward. It's on a Monday night, which is, we all know about Monday night football, whether that should happen or not. That's a completely different debate.
I can open this one up. I'll let you finish your point first.
Move that to Sunday. Then they could play the game on the Wednesday, because the FA Cup 5th round is taking place the following midweek, and there's no replays there. So that's a free midweek. They could play it there. I mean, Shrewsbury, I think they're playing Tranmere that midweek, but presumably they've got some free midweeks in that time, the weeks following that they could play. So I don't see... There's a way around this. The problem is that while the Premier League have been well-meaning and to bring in this winter break of sorts...
I'm not so sure on it.
Again, from what I'm led to believe, I think the FA back the Premier League, but then why on earth would they schedule replays for when one of the some of the teams would be in the break. I mean, it depends what you define as a break.
I don't think it's a break. It's a joke.
It's just a weekend off, isn't it?
The winter break is a joke. Like, you look in the other countries when they do proper winter breaks, they get 2-3 weeks off.
Well, Minamino had it before he came over, didn't he?
But then what's the reason that England's never had a winter break, and it's got nothing to do with how many games they play? What's the reason? No, well, I think it's more to do with the fact you cannot predict the English weather. You can't. So they could let's have these 3 weeks off. And the weather's fine. They come back and the weather's terrible and loads of games gets postponed. Everyone will just say, why didn't we play when the weather was good? It's not like in, Austria where it's going to be snowing, etc., etc. To a certain extent, Germany as well. They're used to that. Italy only has 2 weeks over Christmas, 2 or 3 weeks. The same with Spain. That's Christmas. Can you imagine there being no... I mean, if there was going to be a break, for me, it would be last game on the Boxing Day, come back the second weekend of January with the FA Cup third round. That's what I'd do. I've always said that.
Because it's one where you can blame the TV companies, can't you? That's the reason why England is not having a proper break this year, because they want their football every single weekend. That's why they split the Premier League.
That's why they spent all the money on it. They can't have it both ways.
But Fred, they want it both ways. That's the Premier League.
This is a debate that has gone on a tangent, but I'm going to bring it back because I think there's another big talking point we need to talk about before we need to move on to West Ham, and that is we don't know when the game is going to be played, the replay. Probably going to be in February, probably going to be in the break. If only youngsters are playing, we discussed this just before the podcast. Theo, I'll come to you on it. It's going to be a bit of an issue stopping players going out on loan if they're going to be playing in this replay, isn't it?
Yeah, Pedro Chirivella is probably the best one here because he's said probably for about a year now his future is not at Liverpool, and it's just been waiting for him to go, and he's still there. Granted, he's come in, he's had his opportunities this year, and he's done well. But you can't say to him, "Oh, we want to keep you for this one game." Because whether he gets a permanent move or a loan move, he is going to go at some point. He knows his future's not at the club. And it's if the senior players are off, that means your senior keeper who's available is Kelleher. But then he's been linked with a loan move before. I think when Gorsty first broke the news that Bruce would be going out on loan a couple months back, Kelleher was putting that story with him. And then it's just gone completely quiet there. Another one I'd be looking at is Nico Williams, just because Doyle's put in his analysis here. The way he's playing at the moment, he should have a shot at getting it in the Wales Euro 2020 squad. But if Liverpool get knocked out with the FA Cup to Shrewsbury, what opportunities are he going to get until Liverpool have already won the Premier League? Touchwood. I'm not going to jinx it yet. So it's well, wouldn't he be better off going to a championship team, playing every week, and then just you've got that experience, you can now go to the Euros. And then it's one where if he's got a future with Liverpool or not, that's a brilliant experience for him. Curtis Jones, he's going to stay, but then is he a senior player? Is he a youth reserve player? What do we count him as now? What squad is going to be available? Like the Aston Villa game, I don't think anyone, when that game was announced and they said they're going to be playing the younger players, Liverpool fans expected it to be the under-18s. And it's like, well, do we expect it to be under 18s now? And it is going to be the 23s are off too. And then it's, well, who is going out on loan? Because it's been quite a quiet month so far for Liverpool in terms of players going out. Herbie Kane's gone, but that's really about it, I think, from the team that faced Villa. So
and he was one of the best players against Villa,
he was,
wasn't he?
yeah. It's the most senior side, you could tell.
It's going to be an interesting one for him because you can't deny these youngsters an opportunity to go out and play games when you're potentially just putting them up to be whipping boys against Shrewsbury.
Is this potential to be a PR disaster for Liverpool? I was thinking this because everything's been so positive for months and months on end. And then Klopp, from obviously a position of strength and being, what he's like, when he believes in something, he'll stick with it.
Guy,
yeah. Some might say stubborn when it comes to things like that. And I'm not saying that he's wrong because he quite clearly is right. There's too much asked of top players. But as Andy Holt said, it's not just about Liverpool, the FA Cup. The FA Cup, the entire point of the FA Cup is that it's about everybody. So, and
it's like Shrewsbury played pretty much the same amount of games as Liverpool this season.
Exactly, but they're like 16th, though, aren't they, in their table? So, but then again, they played the full team against Liverpool. It's such a delicate situation because there are the people like me who still think the FA Cup's great, and there's the people like Matt who think it's a complete waste of time.
I thought you were going to throw Joe under the bus then.
No, not Joe. He doesn't count. So yeah, but he just says that he prefers the League Cup, which we could be here all day if we start talking about that. The FA Cup's not going to go anywhere. It's still going to be there. It may get fiddled around a little bit. Personally speaking, I think the replay should stay. I don't have a problem with it being a replay. It could be a big payday for Shrewsbury, but then we come to the question of how many Liverpool fans are going to turn up and watch, because again, what I'm led to believe is that the price for the replay has already been agreed between Liverpool and Shrewsbury, because that's the way things are done. So it's not like Liverpool can say, right, we're only going to charge a £5 for this game, because then Shrewsbury go, hang on, we were getting half the
club
game
would have to
receipts.
subsidise it, wouldn't they?
Exactly. So they'd have to do that. So maybe that's the way around it. But
So
it's just
Shrewsbury are going to sell out their allocation at all, so their fans don't really care what they're paying. But surely the club would want it to be.
well, exactly. The club would want it to be. Shrewsbury want it to be full house,
but the
because
actual
they
fans.
yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting debate, but yeah, bringing it back to the players, Matt, how are you thinking those, you cover the academy a lot, you have covered the academy a lot, you know some of those players, how do you think they'll be feeling, thinking that they're going to go into that game, perhaps with no senior players involved, no Klopp in this, for another first team game? What do you kind of think that's how they're going to be doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be another slightly strange occasion. I'd be surprised if sort of Curtis Jones, Harvey Elliott, if those sorts of players didn't play in this game. I don't think it's quite going to be as weak as what the Aston Villa team was. And I think obviously it's another chance for them to play at Anfield, which is fantastic. I am slightly surprised that Klopp himself isn't going to be there. I think that would have been quite a nice thing for him to be there, even if he was there alongside Neil Critchley, and they sort of did it between them. Because, as Ian said before, it's not really a break for him. He doesn't. Well, he does do a bit of running around on the sidelines. But
I think it's what he gives emotionally and mentally, isn't it?
I mean, to be fair to him, he probably wants a break as well, doesn't he?
Yeah. But I think, I think it would have been nice for him to be there. How much strain mentally on him is there for a fourth round FA Cup game at home to a League One side? Probably not a massive amount. And I just think it would have been...
Your mention's going to be so fun after this.
But no, I think Liverpool will obviously want to get through. These young players want to have more chances in this competition going forward. And as much as I'm not a massive fan of it, it would be very nice to see them again.
Be interested to see if player power actually becomes an issue in this, if those players we've mentioned, like Shaqiri, actually get involved and say, look, we actually want to play some senior games for Liverpool.
I mean, I'm of the opinion that they will. They'll probably want to play, and I don't think it'll be an under-18s team. That's just what my gut tells me. Well, I can't see... Well, we can also I have to say that the club's ownership have been involved in this decision as well, so it's something that they believe in. So I think I think the game might get moved.
Certainly set to be an interesting development over the next couple of weeks, which we'll keep you updated about on this Blood Red podcast every Monday and Friday. But I'll move on, because Liverpool have got another game coming thick and fast, and that is West Ham. They've only won one of their last 6 Premier League games. They are close to the bottom of the table. They're not in great form. But David Moyes is the manager, and he has a pretty decent record against Liverpool. What would you expect from a David Moyes side on Wednesday?
I'm not sure he has a decent record against Liverpool in the sense of winning games, but he draws an awful lot. And he's a good, in that sense,
a lot of managers would probably take that.
Yeah, exactly. So it draws a good result for West Ham at that point. And it's not exactly a terrible result for Liverpool, is it? Let's be perfectly honest. This is their game in hand, isn't it? So... It's the one that's always they've been able to count on for the past 6 weeks, I think it is, or maybe 5 weeks, I should say. So, yeah, we know what West Ham are going to do. I mean, the London Stadium's terrible for football. I mean, the first time I went was last season. It was like, this is dreadful. I mean, from the press box isn't particularly that back in the stand, but you're miles away from the pitch. So if you're a fan sitting at the back of the stand, I mean, you're miles away from it, and it's just it's not great for atmosphere. I mean, I'm speaking as somebody who used to absolutely love going to Upton Park. Used to absolutely love it. It's a proper football ground. I know people say this about certain old stadiums, but it wasn't like it was a really, really old stadium. A couple of the stands were quite reasonably new. He was quite close to the pitch, and it was always a good crack there. But going back to your point about Moyes, yeah, he'll be quite keen to put one over Liverpool. He'll be looking forward to testing himself against Klopp. They drew against Everton, wasn't he? They drew, yeah. So he managed to upset one, his former club and now his former main adversary. I think he'd be quite keen to do that. And of course, Liverpool last season drew their 1-1, and that was round about this time of the year where they dropped a few points that ultimately proved decisive in the title race.
They should have lost to West Ham, shouldn't they? It was offside.
Well, yeah, that's true.
How do you think Liverpool are going to approach the game, Theo? Is it just going to be absolutely back to it, gung ho? Let's get another win. 19 points clear. Let's go for it.
Yeah, so another Premier League team. It's going to be back to basics for them. The FA Cup's not really going to be in the players who step out of minds, and they're just going to go for it. They always seem to have this right mentality when they're approaching the league games. And the only issue I've got for it is if Mane's out, they don't look as good without him. So it's finding that balance there in the front three. But the back five, including Addison in there, solid. No complaints there. They're just doing the job. And the midfield, they just seem to keep finding a way to grind out results and win games in a different style. And yeah, Liverpool weren't at their best against Wolves, but that was up against Adama Traore, who I think no defence can really stop when he's at the races. West Ham, low on confidence, out of form. I think they've got quite a few injuries themselves. Some setting this up for a West Ham upset, but it should be another routine Liverpool performance and they can get back to their best.
Would this be the final nail in the Premier League coffin, Matt? Or do you think it's already done?
I mean, I've already said publicly it is done. I think Liverpool are going to win the league. But, of course, there's more games and more work to be done before that's confirmed. And like Theo said, I mean, if you look at Liverpool's record this season, there's no reason to think that they can't beat West Ham. West Ham have been dire for a few weeks. And look, they're not in the greatest place. They've got loads of injuries. They've struggled for form all season. And David Moyes is a bit of a story and there's a bit of a narrative on that side of things. But I think, look, Liverpool have disproved those sorts of things several times over the last couple of seasons. And, it would be a massive shock if West Ham were to win. It would be a bit of a shock if West Ham were to draw. So I think Liverpool, I'd expect them to go there and win, no doubt about that.
West Ham, of course, being the only Premier League team Liverpool haven't beaten this season. Not least because they haven't played yet.
Yeah. The interesting things to note, I suppose, around this before, from Liverpool's perspective, is team selection. I think, obviously, in defence, you've got it all boxed off. The back five is Addison, it's Trent.
Nobody going for Matip now?
It's Gomez, Van Dijk, it's Robertson.
You're saying that to two members of the Joe Gomez fan club?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Fully fledged founders of the Joe Gomez fan club.
How much is a subscription membership?
I think we've put it on the back burner because it's
free. Everybody's welcome.
We sort of forgot about it at the start of the season because no one else really wanted to be part of it, but now the loving's back.
Anyway, midfield and attack, I think there are selection posers, as you like to call them, Ian. Who would be in your midfield?
Henderson and the Widge, definitely playing. That's one Wijnaldum for the uninitiated. I'm going to go with Naby Keita, Baby Keith. I think he's gonna be. He was on the bench, wasn't he? I think he played there last season, did okay. Although didn't he fall asleep for their goal or the free kick?
He played first game of the season 4-0, didn't he?
Yeah,
he played really well.
The free kick, I think he switched off.
Yeah. So I think Keita might play.
Okay.
If not, then against
Theodore.
It's probably going to be Oxlade-Chamberlain, isn't it? I think that's what he's been doing at the moment, sticking with the same three. It's tempting to throw Fabinho in because he needs minutes, but he was so rusty at the weekend. I think those players coming back from injury, Klopp will probably save them a bit for after the winter break when they can all just have a clean slate for the final hurdle in the season.
That winter break.
Yes.
Same midfield for you, Matt, or what are you thinking in terms of Doyle, or you thinking Theo?
Yeah, I think Henderson,
or your own combination.
Henderson, Wijnaldum and Oxlade-Chamberlain is the obvious one. Obviously, all three of them sat out over the weekend, and I would expect Fabinho to come off the bench just to get a few more minutes under his belt.
I'm going to go with Henderson, Wijnaldum and Lallana.
Oh, Lallana.
Yeah.
Has he been ill or injured or whatever?
He's ill.
Yeah, but I think he probably will be returning, won't he? It's kind of...
To be honest, we don't know. We'll know tomorrow. I mean, I was surprised he missed out, so he must be properly ill.
Okay, well, if he's available, I'm playing Lallana.
If he's not...
Keita. I think just getting Keita on the field in a really senior setup, and if he does, perhaps switch off one or two, he's got Henderson, he's got Wijnaldum, he's got everybody around him who can kind of make up for anything that goes wrong, which players didn't happen on Sunday, didn't really happen for them. In the attack, Sadio Mane, I think, is the big question. Obviously, Firmino and Salah are playing.
I don't think Maine's playing.
So we're saying Sadio no.
Sadio no Maine. There you go.
Sadio no mates.
Yeah. I'm going with Origi.
Yeah.
Origi.
So Origi clean sweep. For all the chat about Minamino.
I mean, absolutely slaughtered Origi. Praise Minamino. None of us are going to play him.
Yeah, anyway. Score predictions?
What did I say last? I said 3-2 to Liverpool for the Shrewsbury game, so I wasn't far off there.
You're still wrong.
I was still wrong, yeah. I was incorrect. Correct. Come back to me.
I'm saying 2-0.
3-0.
3-1.
1-1.
How do you see that one all going?
Well, one team scores, then the other team scores.
But which team scores first?
I would say Liverpool score first.
And then concede and have a nervy end again?
Yeah, I think it's all. You know what? No, you know what? I've changed my mind. I think Liverpool are going to win 4-0.
Big statement
If it doesn't
performance.
happen this week on Wednesday, it'll happen on Saturday. Something's going to happen where they're just going to go, you know what? Forget this,
We're
as
gonna
they say
hammer
in
this.
dubbed films. We're just going to go for it.
Well, we'll be back on Friday to hopefully discuss a 4-0 Liverpool win at the London Stadium.
Minamino scoring all 4.
Having come on as a second-minute substitute for the injured Origi.
And on that note, thank you very much for listening again. You've been wonderful.